Okay guys, serious question today. Should Tony Ferguson be allowed to fight? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the amount of brain trauma that he's had. And also, if you guys haven't heard this, we're going to go through some of the disturbing things that Tony Ferguson's wife has said about him to the police and whether or not it's actually safe for the UFC to let him fight. But before we get into that, I still want to hear some answers from yesterday's question. Did Jared Cannonier mess up by taking another fight so early before Sean Strickland takes another fight? Leave your comments down below in the video for that one. Right now, let's get into Tony Ferguson. Okay guys, I have been thinking about this upcoming Tony Ferguson fight more and more with Paddy Pimblett, and to be honest, it is actually starting to scare me a little bit because I read and heard some things that Tony Ferguson's wife said going into him, and it's just started to all accumulate inside my brain the same way that the damage has been accumulating inside Tony Ferguson's brain. It's no surprise to anyone that Tony Ferguson has always been one of these wacky characters in MMA, from the way that he fights to the way that he's always talked about the media, him just relentlessly kicking metal poles as if that's going to do anything. I guess it might strengthen the shins, who knows? But it's certainly an unconventional way of training for an MMA fight. Tony Ferguson's always been that character, but he's now 35 years old. I believe, from memory, without checking, he's on like a 6-fight skid, which is crazy bad. He is just slipping away down the rankings. And guys, it's not only the fact that he's been losing, it is the way that he has been losing. Getting choked out by Bobby Green, not exactly the worst thing in the world, but the beating that Justin Gaethje put on him, the amount of damage that he took in that fight is something that cannot be ignored. Like, that is the sort of damage that is going to give you long-term problems. And then of course, there was the very famous front kick by Michael Chandler. I am saying all of this from a place of love. I don't want to see Tony Ferguson take any more damage. Tony Ferguson is one of these fighters. On this channel, we talk a lot about having the fight in the fighter. Tony Ferguson is one of those fighters that has proved without the shadow of a doubt that he has the fight in the fighter. But guys, the thing that has made me so concerned is some of the things that his wife has said to police. So you've got the horrible skid that Tony Ferguson is on, the huge amount of damage that he has received from his past opponents. Even before the Justin Gaethje fight, he was getting into wars. Like, he was a man who wasn't scared to get hit and hit back, okay? So there's all that damage going into this 6-fight skid from this 6-fight skid. And then the things that his wife has been saying. You guys need to go to MMAfighting.com and check this out. I'm gonna read you some of the things that Tony Ferguson's wife has been saying about him. Okay guys, so check this out. On March 7th, Tony asks their infant son, do you want to go for a ride? And Tony's wife, Christina, told Tony that it was too late and couldn't take their son. Tony then grabbed the son and jumped the back fence and ran off into the rain. While the infant child didn't have diapers on, Tony didn't have his phone with him, nothing like that. Just ran out into the cold with the baby. Now, luckily, the child was okay, but just imagine that, guys. Like, just imagine, you know, your husband, your partner, your brother, whatever, coming into your house being like, hey kid, you wanna go for a ride? It's a bloody baby, it's raining outside, and they just scoop the baby up, run out the back door and jump the back fence into the rain without a phone or anything like that. Like, that is horrifying for Tony's wife. And the mental spiral, the decisions that Tony makes, it just like, I don't know if it gets worse, it gets weirder. Like, there's more to this. Let's say that. There's a lot more to this, right? Tony Ferguson started accusing his wife of draining their bank account and sending it over to an account in Italy. Now, Christina, his wife, doesn't know anyone in Italy, isn't Italian. Like, this is just one of those crazy Tony things that came out of the blue. So you've got reckless behavior and paranoia as well in the family home. On March 7th, Christina also reported that there was a series of mental breaks from Tony Ferguson. Again, I'm just reading this from MMAjunkie.com. She goes, Tony believed that our son was Jesus Christ, and Tony was the second Jesus Christ, which is, I don't think there's meant to be two of them. We'll have to ask Bryce Mitchell. And Tony was asking their son if Tony's son believed that he was possessed or overtaken by other beings, which was starting to frighten their kid. On February 5th, Christina wrote that Tony didn't sleep and he believed there would be a great flood as the result of a lunar eclipse. Tony purchased a life raft and took Christina and their son on a drive inland all the way to Palm Desert. I mean, Jesus, Tony woke her and her son up in the middle of the night and told them that they had to leave because they weren't safe. Since then, Tony has promised to seek help for his mental issues because of this flood scenario that was happening in his head, but so far hasn't actually gone through with it and done any of it. Right, guys, so these are, I don't know if this is a fair thing to say, but these are some of the things that Tony's wife is willing to share with the police and unfortunately share with the general public. Now, she's obviously being a great partner by sticking with her husband through this tough time. But now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of it, guys. 6-fight losing streak, a cumulative damage of a long MMA career, 35 years old, and already suffering from mental trauma. Guys, I want to know, and personally, I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think that the UFC is being negligent in allowing Tony Ferguson to fight? Like, we are using a decaying brain here to sell fights, to make Paddy Pimblett the next star. Should the Las Vegas Commission, is this fight happening in Las Vegas? Whatever commission is allowing this fight to happen, are they showing gross negligence? Like, is this a safe thing to do? What if Paddy Pimblett pieces up Tony Ferguson? Now, that sounds crazy to say. That sounds insane to say. It's Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett hasn't even broken into the top 10, but Paddy Pimblett has had like a record of 35 fights or something like that. Like, Paddy Pimblett has been around for a while and throws hands. And when you look at the boxing of Tony Ferguson against Bobby Green, you know, going into that Bobby Green fight, there was always this conversation of Tony Ferguson had good rounds against that guy. Tony Ferguson had good moments against that guy. Tony Ferguson now is just, he was boxing against Bobby Green was not good at all. He was getting hit a lot. And I don't see why Paddy Pimblett can't hit Tony Ferguson a lot. What if Paddy Pimblett pieces up Tony Ferguson again? Not to the extent that Justin Gaethje pieced up Tony Ferguson, but does put on a lot of damage on him. Now you're putting that sort of damage against another brain that is clearly decaying here. Guys, do you think that it is safe for Tony Ferguson to continue fighting? And if he loses this fight, does there need to be a sort of push from us, the fans? The way that there's been a push from us, the fans, that Israel Adesanya doesn't deserve another title shot, and you see that the way that that's affecting Dana White. Does there need to be another push from us, the fans, that it is unsafe to let Tony Ferguson keep fighting? It's not just unsafe to him, but it's unsafe to Christina. It's unsafe to Tony Ferguson's child. This man is in the house with these people at night, waking them up at night, driving them into the forest, grabbing a baby in the rain and jumping the back fence. Allowing this man to go and get more brain damage is dangerous. I really believe that it's very dangerous to let this man go and get more brain damage. Guys, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you've been enjoying these videos, maybe consider subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next one.